Hello world, welcome back to the Razor RC. We got the Kyosho Dirt Master in front of us. Pretty much done with the build, did all the mechanical stuff, just got to paint the body and finish the rest of the electronics. But I want to talk about build, how it went, as well as some tips and stuff like that. So first off, the build's actually pretty simple. I think it's one of the easier builds out there. If you've never built an RC car before, I think this would be totally fine because no issues with any of the parts. They did all come in the box. Instructions in my opinion are pretty straightforward. They got one-to-one diagrams. Everything's in English. No real concerns. So for $199, I think this is probably one of the best first timer kits you could buy anyways, because it's so cheap and it's fairly easy and no real issues. Thoughts about the build though: you will need shock oil because there's no shock oil included. I'm running 500 CST up front, 400 in the back. I think that's something like 50 weight, 40 weight, something like that. I'm not really sure, but yeah, that's probably somewhere good to start. You will need calipers because you do have to measure some parts, different shims and things. They do have like little things say you need to be 5 millimeters here or whatever. It does help if you actually have a digital set of calipers. Definitely a hobby knife. You do need to do a lot of trimming. All the parts do come on parts trees. There's a lot of trimming off of sprues and stuff, so definitely you need flush cutters as well. That's kind of obvious. The diff also does not come with any diff fluid. I think they suggest putting in grease, but I would go ahead and just stick 5K diff fluid in the sealed gear differential. It'll just work a lot better than grease. More consistent action, a little more resistance, a little bit more of a limited slip type feel. I did upgrade some parts, so out of the box it does come with shielded bearings all throughout. I upgraded them to sealed bearings, so rubber sealed bearings. I just had all the existing like you see here, those little blue sealed bearings, had all the same bearings, just in a sealed version, because the sealed ones are not going to provide much protection against dirt. Grime will tend to go into those bearings and ruin them pretty quickly, and if you're going to be running this on dirt, you definitely want sealed bearings. Other things I did was change out all the screws to machine screws, so they do come with these like self-tapping screws. Not particularly great. This is what they look like, sort of wide toothed screws, but they are hex hardware and they are pretty good quality actually, but I prefer machine screws. They're just going to work better as you remove pieces and stuff to disassemble the vehicle if you need to repair it or whatever. I also went to flange nuts here on the shock tower, so they come with plastic nuts. I would recommend getting M3 flange nuts, just gonna keep the shocks on a little bit better. They'll unthread a lot easier, and because they're captured, they're not gonna fall off or anything, so that's a nice little upgrade. Not very expensive. All these things do just kind of make the car a little bit better and a lot closer to, I think, the kit spec vehicle as well. Now, differences from the kit spec vehicle, obviously gonna be composite shock towers. I think the hinge pin braces on the RB5 were actually aluminum. These are all plastic, so again, another weakness or kind of a downgrade. It's also going to have the self-tapping screws rather than the machine screws that you typically find on a kit build. Other than that, I think probably the plastic hexes were aluminum on the full-on build, and then yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, otherwise, the kit seems pretty good. Some areas that I would say probably worth upgrading. I think the rear plastic hinge pin braces, the mounts for the arms here, would be worth getting in aluminum. Pretty much every plastic hinge pin braced vehicle I've ever had did break those. Those hinge pins are like 3 millimeters or something like that. Tend to tear out if you crash the back arms into anything. Something else I did have to fix was the rear hubs here. I did have to ream out the holes here because the hinge pins did not really slide through very well. It's a little bit too tight, so I did ream out both sides with a 3 millimeter reamer. I just made it nice and smooth. You definitely want all the arms, the steering rack, everything to like flop nice and smoothly under its own weight. You don't want any binding in any of those things. You just want as smooth action as possible. That'll work a lot better. Be a little more compliant while driving it, and so yeah, that is something I recommend. They also say to put some pillow balls or hollow balls here in the back and then bolt them down. I'm not really sure what those are for. Maybe you can flip the arm mounts for the shocks front and back. I'm not really sure, but yeah, I didn't even do that. I didn't really see a point. Maybe add some more durability. I don't really know, but yeah, I didn't add those little hollow balls that they say to do in the manual. Other than that, yeah, the vehicle worked together pretty well. Some people complain about plastic shims and stuff. They were hard to find. I didn't really have any issues with that. I mean, the whole setup is designed to go from bags 1 to 5, I think it is. And you just start with bag 1 and you just keep going, one by one until you need to go on to the next bag. And they even tell you what bags you're going to need for each step. So let's see if I have an example here. But yeah, it tells you, what bags, number 1, number 2, this one. So basically it starts at number 1, you go through number 1 until you finally get to step 5, then you need to actually open up number 2. So pretty much all the shims and stuff are going to be on the parts tree that come with the parts that you have, whether they be, spacers like you might have on the steering rack, or ball stud spacers or whatever, or arm spacers or whatever. I mean, pretty much all the shims are like almost the same size, like a 3x7x1 or 3x7x2. There are a few that are a couple different, like these washers here, and there are a couple of 1.5mm shims, but other than that, pretty much everything else is like a 3x7x1. So should be not too much issues. I didn't have to refer back to the front or anything. I just pretty much found the shims, and that's again why I recommend having some digital calipers. Just make your life a little bit easier when you're building a kit. Last 2 tips, the shocks. I did actually sand down the tops of the shock bodies a little bit because there's an O-ring that seals it against the shock cap. I found there's a little bit of a seam on those shock bodies, and you probably don't seal quite as well as if you just do a quick pass on them and make them nice and flush and smooth. A little bit of grease on the shock cap adjusters will help, and there's actually a 12mm hex right there on the shock body. So if you have trouble tightening down, you use a 12mm open end wrench or hex wrench or whatever, slip that over the body, and then you can tighten down the shock absorber. Any other tips? I think that's pretty much it. So yeah, this build went together quite well. Definitely something I would recommend for other people, and I found it pretty smooth and easy overall. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. We just got to paint the body, throw in the electronics, and we'll be ready to take this thing out. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit the like, share, subscribe buttons. Look for more videos soon. Thanks for watching.